I'd like to start by sharing an ancient Cambodian proverb with you. Thank you. Men are gold, women are white cloth. Now, this proverb still shapes the social fabric in Cambodia today. And if the inference isn't clear, it's a call to women to guard their virtue. Drop gold into mud and it can be easily wiped clean, its value undiminished. But drop white cloth into mud and it becomes forever soiled, stained, made worthless. It's a shockingly brazen expression of misogyny, but Cambodia is certainly not alone in having the patent on seeing women as less than. Unfortunately, ideas like these are baked into every culture around the world. But I give you this as a bit of background because Cambodia is where our story takes place today. It's where Fjord went to do some work to make things better for women and their families. It has to do with money, but so much more, as you'll hear later. Now, to do this work, we partnered with an extraordinary organisation called Good Return. And Good Return work with the people with the least agency and the least privilege, the poorest of the poor. And they work with an emphasis on women, because unfortunately, poverty does too. Now, Good Return provides face-to-face training in financial literacy to help women establish and run micro-businesses. And this makes sense because in Cambodia, as in most other places in the world, it's women who are expected to run the family finances. Now, the work I'm going to show you today really hits Fjord's sweet spot. It's that intersection of elegantly simple design and social good for organisations who are really committed to making an impact in the world. The centrepiece of the financial literacy training that Good Return does is something they call the money tracker. And this is literally a piece of paper to help people understand their financial position. And you can see here in green on the left is money coming in, and on the right, that's money going out. And the pictures are there to help women with low literacy understand what each column represents. Yes, it's extremely lo-fi, but to use a fantastic metaphor, when you're in the desert, a shovel is a great piece of tech. So our role was to help Good Return transform the money tracker into an app so we could get it into the hands of more people. And digitising this money tracker will bring enormous benefits to a country where 83% of Cambodians are unbanked, and they're mostly relying on cash to facilitate transactions. Most importantly, it will create and track a pattern of behaviour around money that builds reciprocal trust in two ways. Firstly, it will allow these women to see that financial products can actually be beneficial. And secondly, financial institutions can trust that these women will one day make worthy customers. We had to ask ourselves, with a country of 16 million people and only 48% smartphone penetration, weren't we taking a huge risk in making a digital product at all? As it turns out, no, really, because in spite of Cambodia's level of poverty, smartphone use is on the rise, just like it is everywhere else. Of course, social media and messaging apps make up the majority of downloads, but it's parochial to think that impoverished people aren't interested in digital technologies or that digital technology is beyond them. When they see the value that digital tools can bring to their everyday life, they're just as excited as anyone else, which was very obvious in the testing we did later. So obviously the only way to work in this context is to send in a team on the ground. On the left here, this is Matthias Kestel, one of our interaction designers, and on the right is Steve Farkas, one of our experience design leads. And they went to Cambodia with the intention of creating a prototype that they could bring back to Sydney and then refine. It's all sounding pretty straightforward so far. But when you're working in your home country as a designer, you're forearmed with a few tools you probably take for granted, like an understanding of the culture in which your product will function, a knowledge of locally understood visual language that you can use to illustrate concepts, an understanding of the sector in which your product sits and the likely impact of its introduction, and most importantly of all, the ability to communicate in a language that you understand. In this case, our designers were really starting from a zero knowledge base, which is actually a bit of a privilege when you think about it as a designer. I mean, there's very rarely do you go in with no information whatsoever. There are still some things you can't Google, and you just have to start from scratch. So we did that with field research, with the aid of Good Return's excellent translators. And we needed to really understand who these users were, what their lives were like, and how they ran their businesses before we could get started. So these interviews were conducted in potential users' homes or shops, sometimes both, because in many cases Cambodians run their businesses from homes, like this one. So when the woman who lives in this house is ready to do business, she opens this blue window and sells banana cakes through it. And on a good day, she might make enough money so that she can buy the raw ingredients that she'll need to make the cakes that she'll sell the day after. On a very good day, she might be approached to make cakes for somebody's wedding, in which case she might have enough money left after to get her family's health concerns attended to or put aside money to send children to school. On a not so good day, she might have to take the things that she needs on credit, and then usually from other small businesses, and then she'll need to remember that she needs to pay those people back. So reducing this cognitive load was a really important consideration of our design. Other businesses like this might be a small grocery, shop for household items, roadside snacks and drinks for sale, or a street food cart. But because of the complex relationship these small business owners had with money, we knew that the app had to be incredibly simple to use. It had to be so simple that it could compete with the paper money tracker that we saw before, or even just with the unreliable custom of carrying around financials in your head. So to get to that really simple feature set, we asked these women what would be of most benefit to them and decided to focus solely on those. So these ended up being, I want to know how much money is coming in, I want to know how much money is going out, I want to know who I owe money to, I want to know who owes money to me, I want to know is that money for business or personal use, and I want to be able to see that data in a monthly or weekly view so that I can understand my long-term position. So to increase understanding of how the app worked, we symbolised incomings and outgoings with something that replicated the real-world behaviour of these women, and that was the use of clay pots. So small clay pots are really common in Cambodia, and they're routinely used to hold cash. So taking that simple visual shorthand and putting it inside a phone created a really instant and obvious link for women to understand how the app worked. After a short period spent sketching up user flows, we quickly mocked up a prototype that could be tested with the same users that we interviewed earlier. We were able to tweak labels and language in real time so as to create the most universally understood experience for these women. Now the team is back in Sydney working on design and branding with hopefully we're going to have something ready to go by early October, and after a successful pilot in Cambodia, it will be rolled out across Southeast Asia and the Pacific, bringing hope and empowerment to many more women. And at this point, I'm sure it's sounding like something that you'd all really love to get involved in, hopefully. So here's a message from the CEO of Good Return on how you can help.
I'm Shane from Good Return. At Good Return, we have the audacious goal of eradicating extreme poverty by 2030. Poverty is sexist. We're proud to be working with women across Asia and the Pacific to challenge unfair norms and practices and help them pursue economic opportunities by starting and growing small businesses and taking their financial affairs into their own hands. We're thrilled to be working with Fjord and Accenture's Experience Development Studio to gain a deeper understanding of the needs of these women entrepreneurs and how we can design products and services that meet those needs. When one woman is empowered economically, the whole community benefits. If you'd like to get behind our work at Good Return, visit goodreturn.org and make a loan or a donation and pledge your support. Thank you.
So that's a worthy cause, indeed. Perhaps, though, you'll be even more compelled to help out when I make the link of how this refers to that idea of seeing women as less than. While the team was in Cambodia, they discovered that the most valuable feature of this app wasn't actually a feature at all. Many women confided in the translators that because this app could help them account for the movement of every riel, it might help to spare them abuse at the hands of their husbands or families. So we set out to make something that was really quite banal by our standards, but ended up creating a tool that keeps women safe. And that is a great unintended consequence of such a simple design. And unintended consequences are something we talk a lot about at Fjord, and they're usually negative. For example, what you can see happening in Barcelona around Airbnb at the moment. And also, we might not have proverbs, but we definitely have unintended consequences ourselves with seeing women as less than, which manifests itself as soaring rates of domestic violence in this country, and from the phenomenon like Me Too, and the gender pay gap, and so on and so on. So the question is, I guess, can we harness the power of technology to make things better for women here? Judging from this frankly hilarious image, I always love these, that imagery around future tech and what it looks like. If this is really the best we can do to illustrate the concept of what working with artificial intelligence will be like in the future, I think we're in massive trouble. To me, this kind of imagery merely represents more of the same. Like, it is literally that creepy white guy over your shoulder at work, and you just know there's some robo-splaining going on there. But, things are getting better for women, right? There are I&D programs being rolled out in every office, on every corner, including ours. But the last World Economic Forum produced more than this comparatively outstanding photo. It actually produced a report of evidence that the empowerment of women around the world is actually stalling, and in some cases, going backwards. So if tech like artificial intelligence relies on data we already know is riddled with gender and racial bias, then we really need to slow down and get that tech right. It's time to stop with the fail fast mentality and think about the people we hurt if we get it wrong. So thinking back to what Cindy said this morning, data's aren't numbers, they're people. Fortunately, Japan, Korea and the US have all announced AI ethics boards, and Accenture has now actually released the AI fairness tool, and these things are aimed at identifying and eliminating bias in algorithms before they can become entrenched. But it's the responsibility of everyone in this room, because you're all actually at the front lines of this revolution yourselves, to use these tools to design us into this disrupted future very carefully, very consciously, and very ethically, so that we can eliminate the scourge of this current power imbalance. This is the time, Tim Urban said it, this is the time to do it. And in this new world, should anyone set out to design an app that helps women manage money, that's all it should have to do. Thank you.